Sounds good. Thanks for joining us, those who are on the call. I'm Sue Troyan, our Deputy Director of Athletics in our athletic department, and I'm joined by go ahead, Jewel, you can introduce yourself.
Hi, Julie Amari, Athletics Leadership Development in the Athletics Department and Student Affairs.
Thanks, Julie. And we're here today to talk a little bit about the landscape in college athletics and how we at Lehigh are trying to differentiate ourselves in a pretty challenging environment. I'm going to start by talking a little bit about the overall context of the environment, and then I'm going to pass it on. We'll show a small video that we use here at Lehigh in our recruiting process, and Julie will then go into how we're trying to differentiate ourselves within the environment. Some words I would use to describe the current landscape that we are living in: a lot of volatility, challenging, changing court systems, and the unknown. We're in a transformative time period for college athletics that's been heavily influenced by our federal legal systems. The current landscape of college sports has been significantly impacted by decisions from at the federal level of our legal systems that have rendered unlawful a number of longstanding NCAA rules, which were intended to preserve amateurism in college sports. Over the past 10 years, there's been a lot of social pressure around perceptions of unfairness relative to athletes sharing in the proliferating revenues of college sports that has led to a series of complaints that have been or will be evaluated by our court systems. The cases have been decided, have given athletes the opportunity to capitalize on their market-based value or begin to share a small piece of the immense revenues that are generated by major college sports, particularly in the Power 5 conferences. Among the litigated complaints are cases destined for landmark status that will likely change college athletics, in the future. Include the following three cases. In 2014, it was O'Bannon versus the NCAA. This was a case claiming that the NCAA rules were precluding athletes from being compensated for the use of their name, image, and likeness by for-profit entities, which eventually was upheld by the federal court systems. And it's where we're seeing name, image, and likeness that I'll talk a little bit more about kind of exploding right now over the last couple of years. The Alston case in 2029, Alston versus the NCAA. This was a case claiming that the NCAA imposed scholarship limits, had artificially restricted athletes from receiving reasonable educational benefits. This was upheld by the Supreme Court, which also issued admonishments to the NCAA for their pretense in claiming major college sports were amateur athletics and not commercial enterprises, despite billions of dollars in revenues, which benefited salaries of higher profile coaches, the creation of super mega facilities, and which has created even more pressure to win at the highest levels. And the third case is known as Johnson versus the NCAA. This is a current case involving a principal named complainant from Villanova. And in this case claims that the time commitment and control over athlete activities by coaches, staff members meets the definition of employment, and thus athletes deserve to be paid wages for their time spent in sports activity, at least at the level of work-study students under the protection of the Fair Labor Act. Bottom line here is that college sports at the Division I level, and at least for some number of higher profile college sports, are increasingly being interpreted by our judicial systems as commercial activities. And as such, the athletes merit the consideration of employees, including compensation at rates that the market determines or might ultimately be determined by collective bargaining between universities and a union of college athletes. What might be more alarming than the eventual determination of our judicial systems are the possible intrusion of legislative bodies as well. We've already seen state-specific NIL laws enacted and then revised in ways that serve the competitive aspirations of in-state institutions, creating inequities across states in regard to the application of NIL provisions. Bottom line with the NIL, there haven't been a lot of guardrails in place with this. So you're seeing a lot of different activity kind of across state to state, across university of how they're interpreting that rule. So what is the NCAA membership doing about this accelerating drift towards overt commercialism and an employer-employee-based relationship? through the board of directors, a governing group made up of NCAA Division I presidents. A new leader for the organization has been hired, someone who has a strong and successful political experience, apparently in the hope or expectation that he will be able to navigate the intrusion of legislative bodies in the processes. There have been a series of legislative proposals presented which are intended to remove the kind of constraints that our court systems has found to be economically anti-competitive and potentially in violation of antitrust laws. And these include the elimination of restricted personnel classifications of volunteer coaches, which follows prior elimination of a restricted earnings coach classification. And these were actions that occurred only after another successful lawsuit against the NCAA and all of the costs which were borne by NCAA Division I institutions when this happened. We've also seen the elimination of any cap associated with athlete earnings that are even loosely associated with name, image, and likeness, which has led to rather overt direct payments to athletes from sources outside of the universities. You've likely heard of the creation of collectives in sports that can pay athletes thousands and in some cases millions of dollars for their name, image, and likeness. And as I said, not a lot of guardrails by the NCAA were put in that area. So we're seeing some pretty rampant payments out to college athletes right now. We've also seen the elimination of restrictions on athletes transferring through the creation of the transfer portal, such that the process now looks more like free agency in college sports, except there are fewer rules or constraints in college right now than there are in the professional free agency world. All of these have consequential costs, perhaps even significant costs and challenges to athletic departments and programs. And there's also been emerging legislative actions that seem to make the effort to highlight the educational priorities and extended protections for athletes, kind of to counterbalance the focus that's been on employee rights for athletes. And these are some emerging actions through a transformation committee that have taken place over the last couple of years that will come into play this next year, but they're going to require holistic education models for athletes. They're going to provide tuition guarantees for athletes who do not graduate to finish their degree. They're extending medical coverage after graduation and providing coverage of all out-of-pocket medical costs for athletes during enrollment. There's going to be requirement of adding staff member or identifying a current full-time staff member who is trained in DEI work and primarily dedicated to doing that work in athletics. And while all of these initiatives may apparently be more proactive, the actions may be a little too late in the perception of many, honestly. So given, again, all of these circumstances, it's really caused institutions, conferences, the Patriot League to engage in a lot of reflection just about their sports programs, about various hypothetical considerations that might affect our future, that may have the potential to produce changes to college sports that are so significant that institutions and conferences may or will need to make fundamentally defining choices, and choices around, are we going to be an educational in our mission, or are we going to be a commercial enterprise? Doing both may be an option. However, the commitment would likely carry exponentially higher costs. Are we going to find a way to pay athletes because we determine that we cannot compete successfully unless we do that? And we determine that competing successfully is our primary goal. Are we going to add staff like others are adding staff? And how would we do that? And are the costs of the increasing probability of competitive success viable, manageable, and worthwhile? So we have definitely at Lehigh, I think we have a lot of choices to make as an institution, as a conference, and as a department in terms of how we're going to move and decisions we're going to make as we look forward. And as we think about the decisions, our choices need to be grounded in the evaluation of our financial priorities, the evaluation of our mission and our values, and we will not stray away from the mission of being mission driven around the educational model that we are here to prepare our student athletes through their athletic participation for a lifetime of leadership, and that we really value the educational component that athletics plays in their role of developing them as people and developing as people who will go on and lead our world. And it was a pretty great example this past weekend, and listening to CJ McCollum give our commencement speech of what we believe in our athletic department and how and the approach we want to take with every one of our student athletes, quite honestly. And we've also had to think pretty strategically in terms of how we tell our Lehigh story, its value, and how it can separate us from those who are more commercially driven in those endeavors. And so, you know, to speak a little bit on how we separate ourselves in this environment, and as I've talked about, lots going on, lots of changes, lots of challenges. But, you know, I think we've got a pretty distinct opportunity to differentiate ourselves in a really challenging time. And I've asked Julie to join us in talking a little bit about this area in terms of our student athlete development area and how we believe we can differentiate ourselves in a really challenging environment. So before Julie speaks, I'm going to show a video to the group. So give me a second here. And this will kind of talk a little bit about what we do. Here it goes.
Is to help you student athletes learn, grow, and prepare for a lifetime of leadership. How do we help you learn, grow, lead? We are going to capitalize on what we call the 4 cornerstone areas of the student athlete experience. So if you come to Lehigh, you're going to have the opportunity to learn and grow intellectually, first and foremost. You're going to pursue classes that are interesting to you. You're going to pursue a career direction that you want to explore a little bit more. You're going to have the opportunity to do research or pursue things about which you are curious. That is all intellectual development. Next cornerstone is the physical development cornerstone. That includes our strength and conditioning operation, our sports performance team, helping you to get bigger, faster, stronger, more agile, taking care of your body, thinking about the fuel that you put into your body, the hydration, your rest and sleep habits. It also includes sports medicine and anything that you do proactively, preventatively, and rehabilitatively to take care of your bodies. The next cornerstone of your experience is social. So you're going to have the opportunity in college to meet people. We're talking about interactions, your ability to interact confidently with other people. Can you make eye contact? Can you communicate assertively? Can you convey your opinion in a way that is compelling and get other people to come along with you? It's really leadership development is at the core of your social development. So every interaction that you have with professors, with coaches, with teammates, with peers, with classmates, all of those count towards your social development. The last cornerstone is mental, emotional, and psychological development. You're going to have the opportunity to learn and grow psychologically, emotionally, mentally. And if you think about it this way, the first 3 cornerstones, intellectual, physical, and social, those are all external experiences to you. So this last one is how you make sense of those experiences internally, in between your ears, or in your heart, or in your gut, however you make decisions and process information. What is unique to Lehigh is this team behind us and the way that we operate together. So it's the way in which we integrate what we do to make your development holistic overall. And we're real intentional about that. So we are guided by 5 pillars. And the 5 pillars are 5 principles that our coaching staff, our head coaches across all of our teams, identified as important to leadership at Lehigh. They include self-awareness, your ability to understand who you are, your strengths, your limitations, your interests, your passions, your preferences, your personality. Everything about you that makes you you, it starts there with self-awareness. Integrity is your ability to act in congruence with who you are. So what does that mean? That means I don't just know who I am, I actually behave in accordance with that. My actions align with my values and who I am. The next pillar is competitiveness. And that is the idea that you are chasing the best version of yourself every single day. Our toughness pillar is all about sustaining those things, high level of self-awareness, high level of integrity, consistency in your behavior, high level of competitiveness when things get hard. When we talk about toughness, we're not just talking about physical toughness. That's what people think about first. And we're not just talking about mental toughness, we're talking about emotional toughness too. It's the 3 of those bound together. We want you to be that tough because that's what it takes to go out in the real world and not only lead yourself, but lead other people. The 5th pillar is team first mentality. The reason you do this, of course it's gonna make you better. Of course it's gonna make you the best version of yourself, but you do this not for yourself, you do it to serve other people. Team first mentality suggests that we believe in you, and this is true. We believe in you, that you have the ability to do something that enhances the lives of other people, that makes other people better through your own expertise, through your own gifts. But that team first mentality is recognizing that it's really not about me. It's about my teammates. It's about my coaches. It's about the people around me that I can impact to be better. And that is leadership. So we got the 4 cornerstones, we got the 5 pillars, and we got this team of people that is going to help you to grow. So that is our high performance model. We refer to it as better me, better we. When you become a better version of yourself, you inspire that in other people, and that is transformational leadership. That's what we're chasing here.
Julie says it so well. So I'm going to pass it over to Jules to talk a little bit about us differentiating ourselves. Julie.
Thanks, Sue. So yeah, in light of everything that Sue shared about the current landscape of college athletics, it's a great time to double down on what's always been important to us at Lehigh. So our educational mission has always been just that. It's been educational and it's centered student athletes. And I think that we have always been differentiated in that way. But now we kind of have a call to action to be even more clear and even more inspiring with that message as we go out and look for prospective student athletes to join our Lehigh family. And as we talk to current student athletes about why that matters to us and how to act on that during their career. And as we talk to alums about how they can continually reinforce that cycle, because it really is a life cycle. That's the way that we approach the student athlete development process, is beginning with the end in mind and thinking about how can we prepare people for a lifetime of leadership. That includes the ability to lead yourself. It also includes the ability to make a difference in the lives of other people. And then it includes the ability to develop others and find ways to give back and pour back into that life cycle. So at Lehigh, we have this model that we've termed our high performance model, but it really is a community-wide effort. And that's one of the opportunities for us to differentiate ourselves, is if everyone is speaking the same language about holistic student athlete development, we've got common language. It's shared, the understanding of the terms that we're using is shared across our communities. There's potential for people to connect the dots more regularly and at a deeper level so that they can behave in ways that actually make a difference. So when we talk about our holistic development model for student athletes, it really requires everybody to be involved. It's very integrated and it's very collaborative. And that is not easy to achieve because, as you might imagine, everybody's got those 5 pillars that we talked about in the video. Everybody's got a different definition of what self-awareness could mean or of what integrity could mean. And so we've spent the last decade or so helping people to understand and to refine what do those things mean to us within the Lehigh Athletics Department, and how do those principles connect across campus. So my role is unique in that I sit in between the Dean of Students Office and athletics. And so we're intentional about connecting all of the things that we do with student athletes to the larger educational mission of the institution, blueprint foundations that the university aspires to achieve with all Lehigh students. All those same core principles are rooted in the same things that our athletics pillars are rooted in. So there's a tie there. The way that we actually facilitate this learning and growth, so in addition to it being a community-wide effort and it being integrated, is we aim to offer leadership development opportunities throughout a student athlete's career. So that could be individual in nature. Any individual, actually student athlete or staff member, coach, can seek out customized consulting for them. They can say, hey, this is something that I'd like to learn more about by way of being a leader or my own development. And I need help figuring out how to do that. The goal is for each one of our student athletes to create an individualized development plan. And that coaching to support people to help that plan come to fruition the reflection that's inherent in that, the evaluation that's inherent in that, and the planning part, that all needs to be owned by the individual student athlete in order for it to work, or the individual staff member. But there are a variety of people that can support that person through their development. So that coaching and consulting on an individual level is something that we aspire to offer and do offer right now. We also have opportunities programming for student athletes to engage in to support their learning and growth in a more curricular way in leadership development. So this starts on actually the day before orientation every year with our new cohort of first-year student athletes. We have a program called Foundations, which is a transition program. It ties in with university orientation core principles, and it helps student athletes to transition from high school to being a collegiate athlete at Lehigh. And that last part is important because the landscape looks very different at different institutions. So we want to help them understand what it means to get grounded academically first. How do you get your feet on the ground in terms of managing your time, showing up to classes, being able to manage the workload. And then once they're grounded academically, we can begin to look at what are your goals and aspirations for yourself in this first year of college. And then let's begin with the end in mind. When you think about graduating, leaving Lehigh, who do you want to be? Not as important as what you want to be or what role you want to have, but who do you want to be? And then how do we close the gap between where you are and where you want to be? Actually, one of the first things we have all of our first year student athletes do is write a letter to their future selves. And we end up mailing those letters back out to them in their senior year so they can see how much they've grown. We got our student athlete development team that works directly with these first years got a couple text messages last week when our graduates got their letters, and they were somebody actually said, my goal is to do something leadershipy. And I did that. This was a kid who was on our student athlete executive board of our student athlete council. And she was like, I did it. I pursued those options. And I think that's because we ask them to think about it right away when they get on campus and then be intentional about pursuing those opportunities that exist for them. So the first way that we offer leadership development is through this individualized approach. The Foundations program is required for all first-year student athletes so that everybody has a solid foundation in who we are, what we value, how to connect to resources that can be helpful, and to prompt them to do reflection, evaluation, and some planning before they have a little bit more autonomy in their sophomore year. In their sophomore year, we encourage them to participate in a program called Emerging Leaders, which then builds on the foundation they've received about self-leadership. And it teaches them, how do I emerge as a respected leader on my team? So the people around me that I want to impact positively, how do I earn their trust and respect? And so those are core leadership skills in leadership by example. And then we begin to explore, how do you make an impact with your voice, vocal leadership, and what are those skill sets that I need to acquire in order to make a difference? So things like giving and receiving feedback, having difficult conversations, engaging in conflict. How do I hold other people accountable? Those core skills to help in relational leadership. We offer a program for individual student athletes who are interested in that path. We're really excited about launching another opportunity for individual growth, and that is our Lead Scholars program. So Kathy Engelbert endowed a program for women and men who are interested in really becoming top level leaders. And we've handpicked the first cohort of our Lead Scholars program who are launching this summer. And that group, we're focused on developing self with others leadership skills and self for others leadership skills. So we want those student athletes to be the ones that are change agents within organizations and on their teams. And they kind of are going beyond self leadership. They have the ability to influence other people. They understand systems thinking and social perspective taking, and all of those more dynamic leadership skills. So lots of opportunities to engage throughout one's career on an individual level. Then we offer team-based leadership development as well. And this really is at the heart of our group and team dynamics within each of our sport programs. Each one of our sport programs, just as each one of our staff units, has its own kind of unique culture, subculture. We are guided by the 5 pillars across our department, but every team has the opportunity to differentiate themselves a little bit relative to their goals. And so the team-based consulting allows us to support those processes, where teams have to navigate together. Who are we? What is our identity? What do we value as a team? What are our aspirations for the upcoming year? What are the standards of behavior that are going to get us there? What are the roles that we need to fulfill, each of us? How do we leverage each other's strengths for high performance? And then ultimately, what are the systems that we can implement to support us in our pursuits collectively? So the team-based leadership training gives excellent experience in group and team dynamics, in navigating conflict, in preparing individuals to participate in followership, but also in leadership, and transformational leadership. So evolving in and out of those roles based on the circumstances as well. The last level of leadership development opportunities that we offer to our student athletes is the community level. And that includes opportunities for student athletes to practice leadership skills outside of their team setting. So not just in pursuit of their team goals, but really with a servant leadership mindset that I want to give back. I have a strong passion about a specific affinity group or a specific project area, and I'd like to pursue leadership development in that area. So to accomplish that, we offer a bunch of engagement groups where student athletes can participate in these clubs and organizations that are student athlete driven with a specific mission, and then they're learning skills along the way. So we have a student athlete council that partners with our athletics leadership administrators on issues confronting student athletes. We have a community outreach program, our coach program, that is partnering directly with the community service office to serve the local Bethlehem community. We have a student athlete mentor program. These are the upperclassmen student athletes that actually support the first year transition. So in that foundations program that I referenced earlier, we break up all of those first year students into smaller groups, and they are guided by upperclassmen mentors in addition to having meetings with staff members. So the mentoring program provides those upperclassmen a chance to give back directly to their peers. We have a department-wide group called TIDE that works on inclusion, equity, and diversity issues and education across the department. And we have a handful of student athletes who are very passionate about supporting that cause departmentally and within their own teams. And then we also have a chapter of student athletes of color who aim to build community both with other student athletes and students of color on Lehigh's campus, but also with the local community. So those opportunities have been really important to our student athlete leaders as they continue to learn and grow, gives them a chance to expand their network beyond their teams. And again, they're choosing that adventure and then the learning that goes along with it. So the common thread through all of these levels of leadership, the individual, the team, and the community, is that we're asking student athletes to be the owners of their experience. So that means that our whole model, the prerequisites are a growth mindset, meaning I want to learn and grow. This is what I am asking for. I'm excited about this. The pillars of self-awareness and integrity, the consistency of my behavior, my spirit of competitiveness that drives me to be the best version of myself. I'm going to own all that, even when it gets hard. That growth mindset, suggesting that they can learn in all of these circumstances, is really important. So it's our job, our coach's job, to recruit people who have that, who demonstrate that growth mindset, and then a strong sense of ownership that I'm willing to jump in the driver's seat of the car instead of in the passenger seat of the car. And that's one of the differentiating parts of the Lehigh experience. Sometimes it feels like we're swimming upstream with this generation of student athletes, especially given the landscape that they need to choose to own it. And that's hard. But that's one of the messages that we continually share with them, is that you're going to benefit from doing this the right way now for the long run. And not only are you going to benefit, but you're going to have the opportunity to impact other people in a way that really matters. So that sense of ownership, the integrated nature of what we do, I've mentioned a number of times. There are a variety of coaches, a variety of voices and mentors in these student athletes' lives throughout a 4 or 5 year career. So everybody speaking the same language is essential. That integration, the collaboration, and it extends beyond athletics too. So many of our colleagues that partner with us, faculty members, staff members across campus, having an awareness of this language and this model is essential to our students connecting the dots. And the more they connect the dots, the more growth they experience through these leadership reps, the reflection that we're prompting, the evaluation that we ask them to do, and ultimately the planning that becomes their methodology to bridge the gaps in their growth process. So I will pause there because I want to give some time for people to ask questions. We shared a ton of information about the landscape of college sports and about our mission here and the way that we deliver on that in terms of our student athlete experience. I would also offer to our staff members that are on the call to share your perceptions if we missed anything that feels real for you, but would be happy to take any questions that folks have. Sue, do you have closing thoughts too? If people don't have questions, wanted to give you a chance to circle back.
Yeah, no, I think you said it well, Julie. I think it's, we talked on the front end, it's a challenging environment right now for coaches to coach in, for administrators to administrate in. And we've got to figure out a way, the most important thing I think for us during this time period is figuring out who we are, being true to who we are, and being able to differentiate ourselves because of who we are. And I think we have a great opportunity at Lehigh to do that because we've been so intentional with the leadership development piece, where a lot of people are thinking about this now, and even a lot of the transformation committee recommendations are kind of reactionary. We've been thinking about leadership development for 20 years, 25 years. Since I've been here, Joe started a leadership. This was a focal point of how he saw our athletic department growing. And it has been very, very intentional in terms of the programming around leadership development. And I think we're further ahead of the curve than most schools are right now. So I think it is a way to differentiate us during a very challenging environment. And very appreciative that we have somebody of the caliber of Julie in this position, who I deem as one of the best out there in what she does. And a staff that's just fully committed to it, and an opportunity with a lot of new staff to really make an impact. So appreciate everything you're doing, Julie, as well.
I'm wondering how you work through conflict, if you have conflict between student athletes or otherwise.
That's a good question, Lisa. I think we approach every conflict as an opportunity for learning and growth. My brother used to tell me early on, the hardest conversations are the best, and his voice always jumps into my mind when we're confronted with conflict, or our student athletes. We can tell that they're really struggling with something, and those social interpersonal skills have become even more important. The development of those skills in recent years, I think. Some of the pandemic and more of it is a function of technology has changed the way that people communicate and connect with each other. So we're reteaching those skills. So I look at those conflict opportunities as opportunities for growth. And when we frame it that way with them, we're operating from a growth mindset. There's consistency in what we're saying, and they might not like it, but we'll teach them how to work through the emotional side, how to find the facts about a situation, and then how to speak their truth in a way that can actually make it a partnership or a relationship or an organization, a full team, stronger on the other side. It's not always easy. It doesn't always go as seamlessly as I just described, but that's the approach that I would say we take across the board. It's a good question.
Julia, I thought that was great. And Sue, it was really good to hear kind of the landscape that you all are up against in that detail. Like, it's just not something I've engaged with in that detail before. So good luck. So that's really interesting. I love the leadership program that you all have in place. I've been here for 10 years, and each time I get an opportunity to hear more about it and hear, just kind of the pillars and the foundations. It's so impressive. My son's going to be a first-year student. I'm like, I wish he was a student athlete. He's not going to be. But it just to have that kind of extra support and like framing for the students, and that I think it's awesome. So in university communications, there's two things that we think about. Even we have a new VP, so Brett Ludwig, who started with us in the fall, and really kind of thinking about also on the backs of the university strategic plan. Really like the community piece that you talked about, that's going to be a big piece of the university strategic plan. Like, how do we engage with South Bethlehem? So I know, our office is going to be involved with that. So I think that that's an opportunity for maybe us to work together and think about what that could look like intentionally. I know you work with the CSO you mentioned, and Carolina, I'm sure, closely. So I think there's an opportunity there for us to work with you all. And then we talk about just reputation, really from a broad Lehigh University, which includes our athletics programs, right? So we talk about this. We're always like, it benefits, it rises all boats when athletics does well, right? From an entire university standpoint. And then of course we've got people who perform like CJ, and is such an amazing ambassador for the program and for the university itself and kind of academics, right? So like, we are so proud to see him out there and kind of telling the Lehigh story broadly. So I think, how do we work together in university communications to kind of amplify that work that is differentiated? And what does that look like? How do we do that together to, where are the cross lines? Like, leadership is certainly something that is part of our brand, but I think we're going to be looking at that again. So university communications is doing a strategic plan. So we're probably going to do a brand refresh, right? So probably moving away from redefining what it means to lead into something a little bit different. I would imagine there'll be elements of leadership in that, but I think that's something that we should talk about at some point when we're getting into that. So yeah, I wanted to hear what you all were up to, what was new, and get a little bit more detail on how you all were promoting that, or the differentiating piece. So I think there's certainly opportunities for university communications to work with you all. And I wanted to, hear what you all were up to and see what that could look like.
We appreciate, Lindsay, that you jumped on. And I think we talk a lot here, within our department about the importance of telling our story, and the leadership development piece is a big, big part of our story and how we differentiate ourselves. That's why Julie and I wanted to put this together. So we would love to work hand in hand with how the university tells their story, and hope that we can be an important part of that, just as we look at it broadly strategically, and would be more than willing to help in any way that we can to offer our assistance as you guys are planning for that around the strategic plan initiatives, and entering that process.
No, that's great. I will definitely touch on both brand level and the strategic plan community work that I think we'll be involved with. I think there's a lot of stuff that we can do together.
That's great to hear.
For sharing, and it's great.
Thanks,
you.
Lindsay, for joining. Yeah, definitely excited to partner on that. The storytelling is huge and making sure that we continue to bring the right people into the community to strengthen the process that we have started. It's definitely a cycle. So I appreciate that.
And thanks for everybody for being here. We appreciate you guys jumping on.
Thanks for your help,
Thank
Lisa.
you.
You're welcome. Thanks everyone for coming on. We will have the recordings available on the ERAC website just as soon as we get it all together. But I want to thank you all for coming, and thanks to Julie and Sue for your wonderful presentation.
Thanks,
Have a
Lisa.
great rest of your day.
Thank you all.
Thank you. Thank you.